You know what? We're having actually a terrific conversation tonight. I'm here with Pearly Guns, a growing entity on the IG, folks. And for those of you that have never spent any time with a girl that shoots, that's going to be some of the subject material for tonight's episode of the Canadian Gun Vault Behind the Vault Door. All right, we're going to talk about girls and shooting. Right? I'd like to ask you, right, Pearly Guns, as a female. Mm-hmm. All right, coming into the world of Canadian shooting sports, what was your first thought? Going out for the first time, pulling the trigger. Tell me what was on your mind.
Excitement.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I had done it as a kid. And
really?
So I actually, oh God, it was in my cousin's house. He had.
That sounds safe.
It was in New York.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, there you go. You're in the United States. That's okay. They'll shoot guns. They shoot guns from bathtubs.
We used to go as a family.
In moving trucks.
We used to go to my cousin's house in Rochester.
Okay, wait, folks. But I'm going to stop you for 1 second. My apologies to all the good people from the mighty USA who enjoy firearms and recreational use of firearms. I apologize. I grew up as a child seeing all kinds of crazy stuff going on in the U.S. in the 80s. My memories of the USA are... You guys, wow. You guys just love your guns. It's crazy. Just next level stuff. Spending time with people in the USA is wow, you can do that? That's legal? And I just sort of, shake my head. Hey, hold on. Off your porch? Wait a minute. No. Don't worry about the dog. He's fine. He'll get out of the way. He'll get out of the way of a bullet. Get out of the way of a bullet. Right? I honestly, I've had the luxury of going to the USA and having some terrific friendships with people in the USA, and you need to know, America, that Canada has a more relaxed view of firearms. For the people that actually go through the trouble of getting their licenses, we're not in a big rush to blow things up or do anything really insane. We like to shoot at paper a lot. The odd moving target, if you can get us to the sporting clay range, we're into various activities, but just some of the things that maybe you guys do, just not really a reality up here in Canada.
Well, no, that goes, honestly, this is a true story. I went on the weekend as a young child to my cousin's house, and there was an older girl, and she was cool. But I was a tomboy. Yeah. And so...
Not surprising.
My cousin, he would always do it, he'd have bows, and he'd have all these cool things. He had an Argo, which they flipped. And then I'm like, that sounds dangerous, but...
See, you know what?
Okay.
How come I never hear... Well, hold on. I'd like to know, how come I never hear an Argo story that doesn't end with a thing rolling down the side of, a golf course... hill in the middle of the night at 2 a.m.
So what happened was that he says, come on downstairs, I got to show you something.
Oh, yeah. Because all good stories start with that.
No, we go downstairs, and I think I'm 12.
Okay, this is your cousin?
Yeah.
He says, come downstairs, I got to show you something in the basement?
He brings out his little mini, little gun.
Yeah, okay.
And so he loads it.
Of course.
And hold on. That makes sense. He's... shooting the
how old are you guys?
We're 12.
Oh, okay.
But he's shooting the closet door, and there's
one. God. Was it air gun?
No.
It's a real gun.
Yes.
He's shooting into the closet door.
Yeah, but it was very quiet, and we didn't get in trouble.
My mother would have killed me.
No, but listen.
What?
So then he's like, "Here, you try it," and I remember doing this.
Just hand it to
hand it to me, and I put it in, and I aimed. And I thought to myself, I'm shooting at someone's closet door. My aunt is going to kill us.
You know what? Yeah.
So they call us up for dinner, and they're like, what are you two doing down there? What's that noise?
What's that noise? Oh, my God. They're shooting in the house. Okay, for those of you just joining us,
we're fixing something.
We're fixing something, yes. Because that's what discharging a firearm inside the interior of a home does. It fixes things.
It was so long. Wow. It was in the States, and it was a really long time ago.
Okay, hold on. What year would that have been roughly? Just give me a ballpark. You think about that for a second. I'm going to just bring our listeners up to speed. The idea that, in America, that anyone might think it's normal for young people to load firearms and shoot them inside the house without the parents knowing. We don't recommend or endorse that here at the Vault. But you know what, though? Funny enough, different culture. Brings me back to my point. Different culture in the USA. Certainly there are storage laws here in Canada, and that's definitely something that I think people should know about. When you own firearms now in Canada, like all the new people getting their licenses, definitely it's impressed upon them very carefully by instructors that firearms are to be stored in an unloaded state, separate from the ammunition. So, like people out there listening in, if you're not familiar with Canadian law, which says all firearms basically got to be locked away. Separate from ammunition. It's not like the U.S. I mean, the whole finding a loaded gun in the nightstand or underneath the bed, that's really not the kind of thing that happens here in Canada. When you look at the number of people that encounter charges relating to poor storage, I mean, the numbers are insanely low given the number of people that engage in the activity. So, like to let our listeners know that, like in the USA, there aren't all perhaps definitely not some of the same regulations. Some of the things that would potentially happen down there really don't happen up here, like at all. As a result of some good laws that have been made regarding safe storage and handling and the way things are transported. Like, I mean, when you think of maybe your neighbor likes to shoot handguns, like don't think he like loads up his Kimber, stuffs it into his like waistband and heads off to the range. It's not like that, folks. I mean, people have to adhere to the current law, which is that the gun remain in an unloaded state, separate in another container, away from ammunition, locked in a sturdy case that you can't see into, and then they have to be trigger locked. So like the gun's not only unloaded and locked up, it's locked up. So, and then you got to lock it in your trunk. So it's like, it's like quadruple locked. And, then you're only allowed really to drive to the range and back. So like a lot of firearms have to be restricted to range use. And there are a lot of firearms that are. There are some firearms that are not restricted to range use, and those guns can be transported in a different fashion, and taken to areas that would be suitable for discharging, that type of firearm. And there's, city bylaws to consider, and I mean, population densities. Like you're only really allowed to discharge firearms safely in areas where there really aren't too many people, like to worry about hitting. And large open spaces with a great distance between it and the nearest real civilization. So if people think about guns out there in Canadian culture, like I mean they're already there, they exist. Like there's like some in excess of 20 million guns, they figure, in this country. And I say for the number of shootings that we have a year, even if they were all our fault, which none of them are, in a scaled environment, if we don't even register as a percent. So now you've got 99.999% of all these crimes that are committed.
But that study that came out,
which one?
the medical study that had come out? They made a big huge percentage of these injuries being, but what they didn't list it.
Don't get me started on that medical training association article.
Air guns, Nerf guns.
Yeah.
Like they.
I can't remember how the article first came out. I don't know if it was like ridiculously high number of children, dead or injured as a result of firearms, and it was in big blocky letters, and then they pump out a lot of information that's presented as fact. There was some definite problems with that article and the way it was written, and we later find out that this also includes like airsoft injuries. Like the idea that they're not actually firearms and people might get hurt, and then of course the age range. They're showing children. And meanwhile, children
24.
Children up to the age of 24. So that's not really a child.
When I was 24, that I was still considered a child. I would make my parents pay for everything.
Yeah, like at 24.
If I knew that I could live at home until 24, right, I would be like, yes.
Well, you know what? Just to go back to this, the presentation of the facts was like really bad. I mean, it was presented in a way that couldn't be taken back. I mean, it was in bold lettering on the top, and of course, I make the call. and speak to someone and tell them, like, did you guys realize that you've kind of presented some things perhaps in an unfair fashion and an irresponsible way, where you don't differentiate between legally obtained firearms and non-legally obtained firearms. I asked the guy from the news, and he's like, well, we just report what, we've gotten there. I go, well, you can expect a few calls on this. He didn't sound worried. I wonder if he got a little worried, after he got, lambasted, because I'm willing to bet that a lot of people called in and complained about this medical association journalist article. It was awful. It presented firearms owners in the same light as drug dealers and murderers and people that would just without a thought break the law. They're not going to go out to the range. They're not going to go get their license to carry the guns that they commit in crimes. They get things that can't be traced, so they go completely outside the world of legitimate firearm ownership to operate, and somehow we as firearm owners get blamed for it. I mean, it's inevitable. I'm really surprised they haven't taken a bigger shot at us, given all the things that are going on right now, with firearms. I remember a time when all it took was a couple of bad shootings in the U.S. and we might be looking at some new laws. So I mean, in some respects, I think they realize how big we've grown as a community. Like, we're getting bigger every day. The Instagram page is a sign of that. Even the Facebook, I'm noticing, is starting to cultivate a little bit. And, I really enjoy doing it. But, I'm just, I'm surprised in some respects, some of the things that I've seen over the last while. We've seen some good laws. We've seen some reversals. We've seen some, laws that make no sense at all, like, to anybody. I don't even think it makes sense to the people that are making them over the years. Like, I mean, I've seen guns that are prototypes. They don't even exist banned. Like, if that isn't an indication of, like, a complete lack of knowledge, they're banning guns that don't even exist, that they saw in, a video game, instructional packet. Oh, gee, that one can't be legal. Make sure that one's on the list. They created this long list of firearms back in the 90s that, I don't think any of them ever went to any lab, and they just blanket banned them without any form of real assessment. And a lot of those guns would probably pass any kind of inspection by the RCMP, but they're just holding on. Nobody wants to see those guns freed up. Those are going to be like the 12.3s, the 12.4s, the 12.5s. For the people that aren't familiar, there's a whole host of guns, that you can't own in this country that really functionally are no different than any other gun that is totally allowed. You've got an AK-47, which is on a banned list, and that doesn't mean that nobody has them. That just means that the people that own them prior to that change in law got to keep them, but they couldn't really bring them around. Like, they weren't allowed to take them to the range even. They have to stay in their houses for the most part. You have to seek special permission, right, to remove those guns and bring them to the range. And it's sad because these people bought these guns. They were non-restricted items, like the same, non-restricted sort of nature of, like, long guns that you can hunt with. And I mean, there's a number of guns that you can still go out way out into, your friend's farmer's field and shoot them without, having to be in a range type environment. And that's been the case for a very long time. And I mean, there's a lot of guns in this country, and there's been relatively very few accidents considering the number of guns that are out there. So most people are responsible. But so these people bought these guns like AK-47s, which hadn't really been used in any crimes, but they had been used in a lot of movie crimes. These people now bought these guns.
So they based this ban
on
a movie?
Yeah. Well, no, they look. The ongoing joke is they watched every action movie from the 1980s and picked out every gun and banned it. Like, I mean, they went through this long list of guns, and they wouldn't define what a variant was very clearly. So I mean, it wasn't even like manufacturers had the ability to give Canada offerings that would be suitable. They stopped the AK-47s from coming in. And, for the people that are listening, that sounds really scary. But I mean, the truth is that the semi-automatic AK-47s would fire one round when you pull the trigger, just like any other rifle. And they're really no more dangerous than any hunting gun that holds 5 rounds because all the magazines are pinned, right? And so you've got these guns that are functionally no different. One you can take anywhere that you want, and you can shoot it anywhere where it's suitable. and that's been the case for many years. And the other, you're not allowed to leave your house with it. Like if you were lucky enough to own one prior to the change in law. So we've got these people with these guns that they want to use, but they really don't have much of a legal mechanism in place, or I should say the classification system kind of.
Do you know what sucks?
It screws them up.
Is that they're such historical kind of pieces.
Oh, there's some really good ones in there too.
And their value has now like
been diminished. Oh, yeah. Horribly. You've got
based on their classification. And if it was based on history, they would still be.
Yeah. Oh no.
Like
absolutely. Well, I'll give you a perfect example. A Thompson. So for the people that listen, like a Tommy gun. Used to be able to own a Thompson, like a real fully automatic Thompson in Canada up until about 1978, and there was a change in law. And so those people that had them prior to 1978 were allowed to keep them and keep them in functioning form. And but they weren't granted permission to take them to anything other than military ranges with again, special permission. And so you've got these Thompsons, floating around in Canada in older collectors' hands. And when the owner dies, the Thompsons are collected. And so for those of you that haven't seen a Thompson machine gun before, I mean, it's a beautiful piece of old school firearm art. Like it's heavy. It's like 12 pounds. And I mean, this is like the Al Capone gun. Like this is the gun that, all your favorite military, heroes would have carried, this Thompson. Like you had this really classic 1920s style piece that managed to make its way to World War II and be used effectively. And so these terrific historical functioning works of art are being melted. They're rounding them up and melting them as people die.
Weren't the famous bank robbery couple?
Oh yeah, we're talking like Bonnie and Clyde.
Like they
yeah,
use
like
them,
that.
right?
Yeah, for those of you that have never seen a Thompson before, like I mean, it's that old school Chicago style mob. It's that silhouette of a machine gun that people recognize. The vertical foregrip and that drum magazine.
It was that gun?
Yeah, it's like a gangster type gun.
That gun, when I was little, I remember.
Yeah.
And the other one that I remember, and this is the only pistol that I had ever known in my brain.
Yeah.
Was the broom handle.
Oh
Mauser.
yeah, the C96. Yeah.
Like bizarre gun to see, and that was what I envisioned.
Yeah.
As my favorite gun.
Yeah.
And I'd seen them in movies, but never paid attention. But I paid attention to that specific one. It was just that boxy kind of shape.
Yeah, you know what the
actually I didn't even.
The broom handle is a classic shape. The broom handle is like. For those of you that have never seen one before, maybe you want to look it up on Wikipedia or something like that. Just Google it. It's worth a look. A C96 broom handle Mauser is this big, boxy, like turn of the century style, early semi-automatic. It's
put
like
together.
Oh yeah, it's like
with no screws.
Yeah, no screws. No screws.
It's
well,
like
I mean,
it 3D
makes
puzzle.
Yeah, it is really interesting. The parts pressure fit together, and if you don't put them together right, they do not work. And you really do have to pay close attention to
like
small
it's not
details.
even won't even work. It won't even remotely go on.
Yeah,
if it's crazy.
The firearms,
I was taking it apart though the very first time. I was like, how on God's earth is this going to go back together?
Well, this is where it makes total sense to explain to people that maybe don't understand firearms. One of the things that firearm community loves about guns is that you can take these things apart, and if you don't put it back exactly together correctly, it won't work.
Yeah. And
it can be a little frustrating because you got to clean these items. Like it's important to do that. It's part of general maintenance. It's like bringing your car in for an oil change or. It's definitely a big part of firearm ownership is cleaning guns and taking them apart and enjoy them that way. Like it's like a jigsaw puzzle that only functions if you manage to get it right. If you don't, the thing won't work, and it can get really embarrassing all the way up to life-threatening if you're one of those people that are in a position where if you're using a firearm to defend yourself. For the people in the U.S., definitely, I'm speaking to them now. If you don't care for your firearm correctly and train with it and test it regularly, you always run the risk of maybe not putting it together correctly. So getting firearms that are a little bit more simple for new people is always a good idea. Some of the classic older guns can be a little more complicated. I've definitely had my challenges with those.
I'm trying to think of that one.
Which one?
there was it was another one that was hard to get apart. Gershon.
Oh,
So
what's that?
something silly. It was like the Gershon.
Oh.
It was like not. It was.
Oh yeah,
It was.
Yeah, that was a. You know what? Usually the Gershon's not an issue, or neither are Berettas or Tauruses.
No, but
but
it
that
had
one
this,
for some
like,
reason
extra-
something was going on in there that day that Joe had his. It was all locked up, and I couldn't figure out what was wrong with it. And then it eventually went together. But there were some parts though that had shifted out of place.
Scariest gun to put together.
Mm-hmm.
The Wildie.
Oh yeah, the Wildie.
I cringe every
Wildie's
time
just come
I
out.
watch that
Yeah.
put together. Because
Well,
that bolt,
yeah.
the spring.
Yeah.
Oh geez.
The Wildie is a bear trap. If you're not careful, the Wildie, the big Magnumatics, the Wildie, the Automag, the Grizzlies, they'll all, folks, if you don't know what you're doing, like to speak to the issue of beginners and perhaps novice shooters sticking to less complex guns, stay away from the Magnumatics. That's the advanced stuff. And a lot of people would argue there's nothing advanced about it. But definitely if you're a new shooter, I wouldn't recommend you go out and you get yourself like a classic Magnumatic, because taking those things apart can be flat out dangerous. The springs are so stiff on some of these bigger guns that like the Wildie, I have to jack this thing back between my knees on the one side, because you have to manipulate the slide and move the barrel a little bit and then drive in this piece, but there's a way to do it, and you definitely don't want to get the idiot scratch, so you're trying to be real careful. But if you slip, there are recoil magazines in the Wildie that will bite your hand off. Like, it caught the meat of the swell of my palm, and it was like, are you kidding? Right? And I felt it keep going. It was like digging into me, and it was still driving, and I could see the slide moving inwards. And I'm like, holy cow, it's got such sharp edges, and that slide just closed up on my hand like a trap. And I remember actually
bleeding.
I was bleeding. I remember holding my hand open, and the gun was hanging there, connected to my hand, and I could feel it biting my hand. My concern was it was going to snap the piece of my meat of my palm right off and drop to the ground, and I was going to drop it. So I put it down on the table, and then I had to try and find a way to open
Was
it
this
up.
at the range?
Yeah, it happened at the range. The gun was unloaded. I was taking it apart and putting it back together, and it bit me so hard that you would have swore it was angry at me. Like, I learned a valuable lesson that day. Don't be anywhere but in a very relaxed, controlled environment when you got that thing apart, because putting it back together can be a nightmare and dangerous. Yeah, it's a fantastic gun. Like, don't get me wrong. I love the design.
I hate taking apart a pistol or like anything actually at the range if it has to be taken apart.
Yeah.
It makes me so nervous. Based on, you could lose a screw. It could be in front of you 2 seconds, and then if it hits the ground, it's done. Like, it's gone.
Yeah, I know.
Like,
there's so much metal all over the ground, folks, and I mean, once it makes it out into the dirt and brass, it's gone. If you've got like a spring coming out of your gun, don't take your guns apart on the firing line, because when you lose a spring and it's like 2 feet ahead of the bench, but you can't find it exactly, and you got to hold up the line, and you don't want to go home without it because the gun won't work without it. And I mean, it presents some challenges. So it's one of those problem areas you can avoid.
Do you remember losing?
Clean it at home.
You losing the front piece on the M1 Grand?
Oh God!
It came loose.
Yeah, the gas.
Yes.
The gas.
That I couldn't believe was found.
Yeah, so there I am shooting an M1 Garand, which is, again, a very famous, very iconic World War II battle rifle. It's the one that throws that metal casing out of it when it's empty. It goes ba-ding. It's the one you started Call of Duty with back in the the 90s. It was the first first big battle rifle and semi-auto 30-06, and a fantastic gun, and it's gas operated. So there's a gas block on the end that you screw in, and if you shoot this thing enough, it will back out on you, and of course the gas flows through it. So like when the gun goes off, if it's too loose, it sends the gas plug downrange, immediately. And of course, mine comes off. The gun stops working correctly. I can't figure out why. I look and there's the gas plug's gone. And so now we're looking for it when they stop the line. And Pearly Guns managed to retrieve it. What was it, like 25 or 30 yards out?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was out there.
I just figured it
in
was
the grass.
What I had done was I literally aligned myself with the firearm, and I thought you were hitting pretty straight. I thought if anything, it's got to be directly in front of it, based on it going off and then traveling. It's a heavy piece of equipment.
Yeah,
it's not going to veer with wind.
I can't believe you found it. I was actually truly impressed.
I couldn't believe I found it. It was insane. And the grass had just been cut. That was the other easier thing.
Okay, now you know what? Let's finish off tonight by asking a very simple question. Right, as a girl in the world of shooting, right? Are you enjoying it? Like 5 years in, do you enjoy it? Like, do you not enjoy it?
I appreciate it a lot more.
Why?
You just come in contact with so many different people that are so knowledgeable. I always wonder who I'm gonna meet at the next.
Yeah.
Going to the range, you plan your day maybe with a couple of shooters that you already know, but you don't know who is going to show up that day.
Yeah, or what they're going to show up with.
Or what they're going to show up with.
Yeah.
There's been days, that I've seen rifles show up, and I'm like, holy crap! Like, look at this. And then I go the next day, and it's a pistol.
Yeah. Or you come across that gun that you've only seen in a book. You know, that for me, I did a lot of reference reading. I got a buddy, Paul. He does a lot of reference reading, and really knowledgeable kid. And like when you read a lot about guns and you look at a lot of pictures, and you get interested in the history of fire, to spend a little bit of time reading about the great historical figures, the incredible battles that took place, and the firearms that worked, the ones that didn't work, to understand the history connected to firearms is to understand history, because they're intrinsically intertwined.
I think that's what you do though right now on the page.
Yeah.
You give people the Coles Notes version of basically whatever you're showcasing, and they have the ability to read it when they're going into work on the GO train. When they're waiting at the local coffee shop and they're just sitting there. You've created a firearms newspaper, I would say, in a way, is what I would compare it to.
I like to see it as a newsletter.
Yeah.
For the people that know me, I got into Instagram.
Or a magazine. It's either or.
I'm happy with the way it's grown. We're teetering dangerously close to 50,000, and we've been in operation for 13 months.
That's crazy.
And you know what? And it's all because of the followers. They've been wonderful. I've really been blessed with a great group. They
ask a lot of great questions.
They do, and I love when they get involved.
And I think that what's nice to see is, because I do read a lot of the comments, it's nice to see that there's interaction between Instagram viewers without you even getting involved in the conversation.
Yeah.
Sometimes I'll read a comment, and then I'll see that someone has asked the question, and then another viewer just happens to answer the question before you have the chance to.
It's
and then they start their own kind of conversation. It's kind of neat to have everyone mingling.
It's really great to see the community kind of growing and to see people interacting with one another. I definitely am going to have to jump to a new format to keep up. Definitely with my own writing and with the things that are going to be going on in the not too distant future. I definitely needed to get into another forum, and I think that's part of the thing is the Instagram pages have somehow magically kind of transformed into forums a little bit, and I love that. And I think that's something that's going to be addressed with the website. We're putting together a website, and it's going to be forum capable. I like the idea of people talking. Like any other website, you'll have to register. And you'll just have to trust that we're going to, run a clean space. I like the idea of continuing on with the Instagram started. Definitely bringing, people across, to our webpage is going to be important to me.
You get the odd little shark.
Oh yeah, yeah.
They're a little shark.
Yeah, you know what,
I have issues with those people because it's like, you know what? What kind of point are you trying to prove?
Yeah, you know what?
Like everyone's getting along
I'm
here.
not. Yeah.
Everyone's enjoying.
Yeah, but they don't fit in. You know what? But the community's grown to a size where they really don't fit in. And I've seen people stand in my place, God bless them, and say, you know what? The administrator or the owner or whatever you want to call me, you know, the guy who runs the IG is not going to like it. I've seen those conversations, and you know, I appreciate that we're policing ourselves. We really are a fantastic, I think, bunch of people, and I think that's represented on the Instagram page. I spend a little bit of time on Facebook. It mirrors the Instagram page a little bit now.
I think
it's a little more political there.
I don't want, it's nice to see you monitor this. You don't allow anyone to feel intimidated by asking questions or making comments. You don't.
You know, I want to run.
You don't allow anyone making fun of anybody.
I may. You know what? I'm a dyed-in-the-wool conservative in many respects, and at the same time, I'm also a liberal, and I know that. Certainly, fiscally, I'm definitely conservative. I believe in, you know, running tight budgets, and you know, that's my father and me. You know, run a tight ship efficiently, and you'll spend less money, and you'll be better for it. And in some other respects, I'm very liberal in terms of my attitudes towards people and the things that, you know, they may or may not do.
I can't talk to you anymore.
Oh, you're going to cut me off now. Okay, look, it's really important.
You might as well wear a red shirt.
You know what? Oh, God.
Show your pride.
Oh, wow. Wow. You know what? Pearly Guns, ladies and gentlemen. If you have any complaints, forward them all off to her. This is where I'll definitely say that, you know, it's really important. I think that people understand that, you know, we realize there are liberals out there that shoot guns and that enjoy guns that may not necessarily agree with, you know, their party's view, you know, on firearms.
Do you know any?
What? Liberals, you know, I don't spend a lot of time with liberals. You know what? They get jacked up too easy, and I can't deal with that right now. I've got so many people in my life that are so dynamic and exciting. I can't deal with somebody having a mental breakdown. Like, there's no way, because I said something that triggered them. And of course, you know, like, not all liberals are like this. I think it's really important to kind of point this out. And I mean, I hate to paint with a big brush, but I mean, rather than go through a long-winded explanation of why I'm going to say this, I mean, liberal-minded people think a certain way, and I have no difficulties with that. I don't begrudge anybody, right, to think what they want. But I definitely think, though, that there's a segment of their population that have gone right off the deep end. And I think that people are starting to recognize how insanely, ridiculous some of the arguments are and some of the things that are done. So, I mean, I don't think that all liberals, think that it's a good idea to spend $200,000 on a floating duck. I'm sure
Which apparently got shot.
Well, I don't know if that may have been fake news. I think that could have been some gun owners wishing that he had shot it. But the truth is that, you know what? I want to hold on. First of all, I'd like to celebrate. Hold on, wait. I would like to celebrate the fact that nobody from the Canadian firearm community decided to take a shot at that duck. Right? I can't believe that nobody, right, decided that they weren't going to shoot a hole in that duck.
I don't think it was done deliberately.
Yeah, you know, like, but I mean, could you imagine though? Like, first of all, I'd like to say very clearly, I would never endorse shooting at the duck. I would not encourage it. I don't think it's a good idea. I think it's unsafe. I don't even know what that thing's filled with. It might not be a good idea to shoot at a giant floating, bag of gas potentially. So I'd like to take a moment to celebrate that nobody from the firearm community decided to take a pot shot at the duck. I'm sure there were a couple of people that thought about it. Definitely, not the kind of thing that we can endorse on the vault. But you know what? Like the $200,000 duck. What were they thinking?
I'm not really sure.
Well, regardless, back to my point. Well, I'm just going to get back to my point. Not all people with liberal mindsets are, seemingly going off the deep end right now. So, I mean, we welcome you. If you've got, some ideas that maybe historically, have conflicted with what the conservative, party may not have agreed with, perhaps potentially you might consider taking a walk over to our side just to see what's going on. Because, I mean, we've got some really progressive people, I think, in our midst now. Andrew Scheer got elected. And I'm seeing some really strong, superpower type presence in Parliament. right now. Like Michelle Rumpel is like on fire. Like, I mean, I watch her work and it's like, yeah, go get him.
She's crazy.
Why do you think she's crazy?
No, like not crazy. I mean, like, I mean, like she's crazy. Like she's crazy good. The way that she articulates and puts it out there to him, I'm just like, as a woman, I'm going, I'd be scared.
There's, you know what? There's no question that, you know, she's a cutie, right? She's got that, you know, blonde hair, and you know, she looks like a little pixie. But this girl's got some spirit. I'm really liking the way she's tackling problems, and you know, I definitely want to see her get up there. You know, I like Max too. You know, Max spent a little time with the firearm community. He put in the time. I think that if there's any place for him, you know, in the next grouping, you know, I would definitely find, you know, a spot for a guy that, you know, came that close to winning the race. I mean, he obviously had his act together. So definitely I would hope that there's a place for him somewhere at the table. What's that?
Can I tell you
Go ahead.
the number right now?
What is it?
49,945.
Wow. Okay, so we're pretty close. Yeah, I'm kind of excited about this. We're teetering dangerously close to the edge of about 58 followers before 50,000, which is turning out to be a big deal apparently. You know, I'm really kind of interested to see how this goes. 1 year, yeah, more or less. But you know what though? That's going to be about as far as we're going to take tonight's Behind the Vault Door. I'd like to thank Pearly Guns for being here. I thank you so much for being here, Pearly Guns.
Thank you.
All right, we love having you, and I got to tell you, I always really appreciate when you throw your 2 cents in the vault.